Well, now, in the true spirit of inquiry, let's take a closer look at David Cameron's plan to take housing benefit and job seekers allowance from the under-25s who aren't in work or education. It is a rather vague idea as yet, but what would the consequences be? Our social affairs editor, Jackie Long, and economics editor, Faisal Islam, are with me now. Jackie, I mean, the numbers are enormous. I mean, Mr. Cameron himself mentioned 1 million people being affected by this.
He's talking about 1 million people not in education, employment or training. So let's have a look at what they get at the moment. If you're under 25, you're single, you've got no children, you can claim housing benefit, but you can claim housing benefit for a single room in shared accommodation, not for a flat or a house. And although the figures vary across the country, the average for the under-25s is about £89 a week. Now, the Conservatives have floated this idea before of limiting housing benefit to the under-25s. One of the big problems for their critics, which included many Liberal Democrats actually, was that it was predicated on this notion that young people's lives are neat and tidy, that they would be able to stay at home, that their parents would allow them to stay at home. So the big homelessness charities would tell you, for example, that the biggest cause of homelessness in the under-25s is family breakdown. So you add into that this new idea of cutting other benefits to the under-25s, and we take that to mean job seekers allowance, which is around £51 a week. And it raises really very big fears for many people about how these young people might manage if they don't take up the government's carrot, if you like, to earn or learn training as such. So we talked to some young people about it today in London. This is what they had to say.
A lot of under-25s that are on job seekers allowance and that are on housing benefits, ones that need housing benefits, haven't really got, sometimes they don't have their parents' support. You're going to be messing up a lot of young people's lives.
Job ain't as easy as everyone makes out as well. Like, if you don't have experience, no one wants to help you out to get experience.
It's okay if you come from a privileged background to find out how to get into jobs and you have loads of opportunities, you've got the support of your family. But if you're from a difficult background or you don't have that kind of support, it makes it very difficult.
So no support there for David Cameron's idea today. But the Conservatives know there is very strong support for their tough stance on welfare. Just on Friday, the Policy Exchange, described as the Conservative Party's favourite think tank, I don't know whether they like that name or not, but they released a survey which suggested that the public wanted everybody to work for their benefits except single parents. Now, this is interesting, it may be a coincidence. Today, this afternoon, the ministers talking about this idea are being very cagey about whether young single parents would be included in this if this is a policy that gets off the ground.
Well, Faisal, are we beginning to see a kind of jigsaw building here? After all, we had the Chancellor say that he was going to develop a surplus in the budget and that was going to go to paying off the deficit. So are we now in the foothills of this? Is this exactly what that is?
So the Chancellor in the next Parliament wants to squeeze welfare more. A figure of £10 billion has been bandied about. And if you like, what he'll be saying is he wants to switch the costs of failure, paying those costs, housing benefit, unemployment benefit, and instead invest in Britain, protect capital spending on infrastructure and things like that. The numbers are really quite interesting. Under 25s on job seekers allowance, there's just over 400,000 and that costs £1.2 billion. And on housing benefit, just under 400,000 and that costs £1.8 billion. But just to take housing benefit, over half, as Jackie was saying, over half of the housing benefit recipients are in fact parents. So it'd be very difficult and tricky for the government to hit those guys. But you can see why they want to have a go at the housing benefit budget, even after the so-called bedroom tax, the spare room subsidy, as the government likes to call it. The housing benefit bill will be £24 billion a year over the next 5 years. But you can see the outlines now of their strategy going forward, which is to spend money on capital spending and to fund that by cutting some of the benefit spending.
Faisal Islam, Jackie Long.